They came not with swords, but with rhythm, not with war cries, but with trembling feet. It began on a summer morning in the heart of Strasbourg when the first woman stepped into the square and danced. No music, no festival, no reason, just movement. And in the days that followed, that movement spread like a plague. At first they thought it was madness. Some whispered of a curse, others of divine punishment. Within a week, dozens joined her. Their feet bled, their bodies twisted, but they would not stop. They could not stop. This was not a festival, it was a siege of the human mind. Doctors wrapped in robes and masks gathered in confusion. They diagnosed dancing mania. But no diagnosis could silence the pounding of feet. The church declared it the work of the saints, punishment from above. Masses were organized, and still they danced. Processions marched through the streets, and still they danced. Their hunger turned to delirium. Some said it was witchcraft, others whispered of poisoned bread. But beneath every theory was the same terror. No one could stop the music that no one could hear. The plague spread across the region like wildfire through dry wheat. Hundreds twirled and convulsed in the scorching heat. Children cried in doorways as their mothers joined the spiral. It was as if the city itself had forgotten how to stand still. Officials turned to music, believing rhythm might cure rhythm. They built stages, hired musicians, and the dancers only moved faster. The cure became the fuel. Husbands watched wives dance themselves to death. Children buried mothers while music still echoed. A city that had known war now feared its own heartbeat. But this plague was unlike any other. It did not strike flesh. It consumed will. The dancers did not resist because they had already surrendered to something ancient, something silent, something that waited beneath their feet. Weeks passed, and as quickly as it began, it faded. The square grew silent. No answers, no cures, only whispers. And the stone beneath the city remembered. Some say it was mass hysteria, some cursed bread, but some still believe something called them to dance. And for a brief, terrible summer, Strasbourg obeyed. History does not always scream. Sometimes it dances. Through time, through blood, through the forgotten cracks of a city that once moved to no music at all. And if you listen closely, you might still hear the rhythm. Whispers slithered through the narrow alleys like smoke. Some swore they had seen shadows dancing before the plague began, as if the city itself had rehearsed this madness. Old priests traced their fingers across torn manuscripts, searching for prophecies buried in dust. But every line ended the same way, with silence. No one could predict the fever would spread like wind through wheat. In the blistering heat of July, hundreds of bodies pulsed to an invisible rhythm. Women in veils, bakers, merchants, monks, no name could escape it. The streets themselves became a stage for something older than memory. The city's physicians mixed herbs and prayers, hoping one might drown the music. But the rhythm grew louder, pressing against walls, rattling windows, crawling beneath doors. They tried binding the dancers to wooden benches, but their bodies shook loose, as if possessed by unseen strings. Desperation birthed rituals. Priests paraded relics of saints through the streets. Bells screamed through the air. Fires were lit at night, not for warmth, but to keep whatever spirit haunted them at bay. And still, they danced. Their bodies nothing more than hollow vessels, their eyes glazed with a fever that was not of this world. The city council turned to an idea that would define their failure. If music had caused the madness, perhaps more music could end it. They raised wooden platforms, musicians were summoned, and soon the streets drowned in rhythm. But the music did not heal them, it fed the hunger. Dancers' faces twisted between ecstasy and despair, like puppets tangled in their own strings. Laughter and screams blurred together, until no one could tell which was which. The cure had become the devil's lullaby. Husbands buried wives while violins still wailed through the square. Mothers collapsed beside their children, their bodies still twitching in rhythm even after death's grip. The city did not fight the plague, it danced with it. And in that grim duet, death always led. Husbands buried wives while violins still wailed through the square. Mothers collapsed beside their children, their bodies still twitching in rhythm even after death's grip. The city did not fight the plague, it danced with it. And in that grim duet, death always led. By the third week, silence became a memory. The square had no dawn or dusk, only rhythm. Merchants closed their doors, churches emptied, and the dancers moved like clockwork, slaves to a pulse no ear could hear. Even the wind seemed to sway. In cellars beneath the city, the whispers grew louder. Survivors claimed to hear footsteps in empty halls, echoes of dancing when no one was there. Some believed the earth beneath Strasbourg had awakened, a buried rhythm carved into its stones centuries before. Not a curse, not a miracle, a memory. Doctors fled. Priests stopped preaching. Even the soldiers kept their distance, as if afraid their own boots might betray them and begin to tap. The city fell quiet on the surface, but below, the dance went on. A rhythm without a drummer, a song without a singer. Then, one morning, as sudden as it had begun, the rhythm broke. The dancers fell still, some alive, some not. The square lay quiet, its stones cracked, its walls blackened by torch smoke. No one spoke, no one sang, no one dared to move. Authorities burned the stages, they blessed the stones, and still, no one forgot. Even years later, when children played in the square, mothers would hush them at sunset, because they said, when the moon was right, you could still hear footsteps. The plague had taken no fortress, claimed no throne. It needed no banners, no war cries. It only needed rhythm and the frailty of human flesh. The city of Strasbourg never forgot the summer when the ground itself demanded to be heard. Some call it hysteria, some call it poison. But the dead left behind a rhythm that no scripture could erase, and every echo begins with a single step. History does not always scream. Sometimes it dances, through centuries, through fear, through the cracks of every stone that once heard it. And if you stand in the silence long enough, you'll feel the earth moving beneath your feet. When the dance finally ended, the silence was heavier than the fever itself. It wasn't relief that filled the city. It was fear. Fear that the rhythm had only fallen asleep. Families boarded their windows at night, whispering prayers no one had spoken in years. They believed if they stayed silent, the rhythm would not hear them, but silence was never a shield. The priests declared the ground cursed. They drew chalk lines and carved crosses into the walls. But no symbol could keep out something born from beneath their feet. Even the river refused to stay still. Locals swore the water rippled at night, as if something deep below was breathing. There were those who claimed to still hear it, a pulse beneath the stones. Some placed their ears to the ground and felt the beat, and a few smiled as if welcoming an old friend. The city rebuilt the square brick by brick, but you cannot bury a song, you can only muffle it. Years later, travelers spoke of hearing drums at night. They said it began as a whisper, then a tremor, then a song, but when they turned toward the square, nothing. Mothers warned their children, never step on the square at night. If you do, your feet may not obey you. The plague was gone, but its shadow remained, carved into the rhythm of the city. Every step, every breath, every silence, remembered. And some nights, when the moon rises red, a single footstep echoes through the square, not enough to summon a crowd, just enough to remind the city. It never truly ended. History still whispers, if we dare to listen.